this influence machine goes into action that, as you say, they put a couple, CIA officials, NSA officials, White House officials on the media that explain, why this is great and why everything's okay now, why it was never really a problem before. But anyway, just because we're so wonderful, we've changed the laws to make your life better. And a lot of people in media, they repeat this. They write the quote. They say such and such said this. And then it gets put out through political sort of partisan channels and reporting. It goes through the more like press wire service reporting, where they try not to take a position and they just say such and such said this, such and such said that. And then people begin to take these statements that were reported as facts that were reported. And then it goes into, the Facebook, Twitter stream where everybody's in open combat all the time and they're just repeating things and distorting things to make it more of sort of a reality. And then we get to this world that we have today, we see so clearly now, it wasn't so clear then, where people are pushing positions using quotes and reporting and misreporting to try to create facts or create a reality that's not true, but it is popular. And we look at things like YouTube and Facebook that decide, what to show you next in this feed that agrees with what you already think and, reinforce these
only on Be Positive
structures and realities. And eventually what we have is this influence machine. And I very much think this is responsible actually for climate inaction in a real way. Because when you look at the science, a lot of people understand what's happening to the world, what's happening to the way things are changing. But again, we run into this system where a lot of people care about it, but they don't feel that anything can be done about it. And it's interesting because I think a majority of the media is actually backing things like climate reform. But there are factions within the media, certain verticals like silos, almost like generals for the troops of their population, that are giving them the quotes and the facts and the misreporting to say why you don't need to worry about it or why it's not reliable. And these influence machines, it's not just about climate. It's about every issue. It's about the election in the United States. It's about China. It's about America. It's about Russia. It's about Germany. It's about immigration. It's about anything that you think about. It's about technology and tech companies that are constantly happening, even when we're asleep, because half the time it's run by machines, to help you be certain of a world that's not really being proven or established. It's merely being talked about. It's very popular to tell a story that everyone is so free, everything is so free. But the reality is we have a great freedom of expression in a very small space. You could do anything you want between this line and this line. But if you go beyond that, if you talk about something outside of that, if you say something that's a little bit unusual, now all of the constraints appear. Those could be, again, state constraints with the law and its punishments. Those could be popular constraints from the community and its opinion, which nowadays it's, we've all seen the sort of mob crowd effects come over on the internet, where disfavored opinions, even well-thought, well-grounded, well-argued opinions that contradict what is popular, become attacked. And I think even journalists are very well aware of this. This is sort of sweeping the media landscape today. And then this comes down to this bottom issue that I think when you talk about freedom, you get back to. What does freedom mean when people are so comfortable that they don't want to do anything exceptional, that they don't want to do anything unusual, that they don't want to do anything unpopular? The only thing they want to do is what everyone else is doing, because it's great. They're in their nice couch, even in a cheap apartment, even if they're not doing well economically, there's so much entertainment that they can get by. They can ignore their problems, their family's problems, the world's problems, uh, and other people who are paid to think about these problems, corporations and governments, they take advantage of this vacuum where everybody else is kind of relaxing through the times. Sometimes because they're lazy, but I think more charitably because they deal with problems and these unequal times where they have very little and these powerful people have so much that they need an escape. They need a way psychologically to make it to the next day and show up at their work, which could be very difficult, it could be very unrewarding, in order to keep on surviving. How do you
only on Be Positive
think through this challenge of people who are, they maybe have power, but they don't realize they have power, and they have no desire to use their power because they're so traumatized. They're just looking to escape, right? They're not looking for revolution. They're just looking to survive. You know, this is one of the interesting things in my experience with the reporting of 2013 on mass surveillance, is it had such a powerful effect, not just in the United States, but around the world, because it kind of destroyed a myth that everybody believed, you know, some understanding we all thought we had. The idea that the government is listening to everything. In a lot of countries in Russia and China, I think it's popular. In places like the United States, it was seen as like a conspiracy theory, something, you know, your crazy uncle said. Now, we knew the government listened to some people and they had some capabilities. Even in places like Russia and China, I think, you know, they know the government's going after some troublemakers, some people they don't like, even if they're just political activists or students. But they had an understanding, or they thought they had an understanding of the limitations of it. They listen to a phone call, they intercept letters, they follow people on the street. But now there's this idea that the phone that you're not even using, it's just sitting in your pocket. You know, you're not looking at the screen, you're not using an app. That's connected to the cell phone tower. And the cell phone tower is recording that you were here at this time, and then you got on the train and you went to this place and you went to that place. Now there's this massive system of all of these technologies around us that are, even without human intervention, it just happens because of the way the system was built, instantaneously, automatically, always creating perfect records of private lives as best they can. And I think to a lot of people that shattered their understanding of how exposed they were, how vulnerable they were. And a lot of people, you know, they didn't have anything that they were personally afraid the police would come after them. But now they understand somebody knows this. You know, even if it's just the Facebook trying to sell you shoes. And I think there's an interesting dynamic between this technology that's making life so difficult for all of us. It's making us naked in so many ways to power, to those who hold power. And then on the other side, it's making life difficult for power in new ways. I mean, the fact that you and I are having this conversation right now, in previous generations, this would be impossible. The whole point of exile was a kind of social death sentence. It was to try to silence critics, right?
Only on Be Positive.
Exile was allowed by authorities. People were allowed to go out, or forced out of the country, because then people wouldn't fight to the death. You know, you wouldn't have revolutionaries with rifles in the mountains. You'd force them out to Paris or something like that. And then, yeah, they'd be writing books, but no one in China or the United States or whatever would actually be reading them. They wouldn't be running for political office. They wouldn't be causing problems. But now, the same technology that is shaping our minds and our thoughts to limit us, to constrain us, is at the same time expanding our voices and allowing them to reach new places. And just, I wonder what you think about that, and do you feel that?